All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lieutenant Pedro Barano, the Public Information Officer for the Garland Police Department. We called this press conference together because we had a major incident early this morning regarding an officer involved shooting and an officer who was shot. At this time, I'd like to introduce Chief of Police Jeff Bryan, spelled Jeffbryan.
Thank you. As Lieutenant Barano said, my name's Jeff Bryan. I'm the police chief here with the Garland Police Department, and I'm here to provide an update for an event that occurred last night in Garland involving several Garland police officers. As many of you know, we have a Garland officer that was shot, and we also have multiple officers that were involved in an officer-involved shooting. So I'm going to share the details of what occurred last night with the understanding that this is an ongoing investigation. And so this incident spans 3 separate crime scenes, so it's very complicated. But last night, just after midnight, or I say this morning, just after midnight, Garland PD officers were dispatched to the 100 block of West Wanda and report to a gunshot disturbance. Multiple witnesses reporting hearing gunshots in the area. And one of the witnesses on the 911 call, you could hear at least 10 gunshots in the background that were occurring next to her house. Upon arrival, 2 officers encountered an ambush as the suspect opened fire as the officers arrived on scene. The officers did not have time to exit their vehicles and were unable to return fire during this initial barrage that was occurring, but both managed to escape the ambush. One officer's vehicle was struck multiple times, a projectile shattering the windshield, while the other officer sustained multiple impacts, including a round that entered the vehicle, passing through one of the officer's leg and then lodging into his other leg. Prompt action by responding officers, including the application of tourniquets, ensured that the injured officer was stable and quickly transported to a local hospital where he's being treated and is expected to recover. The suspect was seen fleeing in a white pickup truck. Additional officers arrived on scene and expanded the search. One officer traveling on West Margarita, which is a street just south of the initial incident, was caught off guard by a second ambush by the same suspect. Unbeknownst to her, the suspect had parked his vehicle and taken a concealed position behind parked cars. The suspect opened fire, striking her vehicle and forcing the officer to take cover. As reinforcements arrived, the suspect engaged these officers with gunfire, and an exchange of gunfire ensued with officers firing back. The suspect then fled between houses on foot and was tracked to a residence on West Wanda, which we know now he has family connections to this house. When officers surrounded the residence, they learned that additional family members were present inside. An effort was made to safely evacuate everyone from the house. During this process, the suspect charged from the residence while pointing an object in what I'll describe as a shooter's stance at the officers. In response, multiple officers fired simultaneously, and the suspect was fatally shot. We're still trying to determine what the object was that he pointed at the officers, but indications are that it was a magazine from one of the guns. We did recover 2 firearms nearby that we believed he endangered our officers with, which were dry of ammunition. The suspect has been identified as 24-year-old Bernardo Mares. At this time, we do not yet understand what prompted Mr. Mares to engage these shootings in his attempt to kill multiple police officers. But according to witnesses, he indicated that he was not going to jail and that he was going to force officers to kill him. We ask that you please keep the injured officer and Mr. Mares' family in your prayers as they try to make sense of this incident. As it is standard procedure, the officers involved have been placed on administrative leave with multiple investigations, including one by the District Attorney's Office, are underway. Due to the complexity of this ongoing nature of this incident, I'm not prepared to answer further questions about this incident. However, we will provide additional information when appropriate. But I'll add, I did talk to the officer this morning about 2 a.m. that was in the hospital. He was in a lot of pain, but he had good spirits, and he's a very resilient officer. He's been with us for 1 year, and the poise that he showed for 1 year officer, I'm very proud of him. In fact, I'm proud of all of our officers. You know, was an incident where multiple gunshots were being fired, and these officers charged into that, protecting that neighborhood and protecting the other officers. And so I'm proud of each of them. So again, I can't answer questions, probably anything else on this specific incident, but if you have other questions, I'll take a few questions.
Well, Chief, can you please at least tell us how many officers are on leave right now, sir?
Pedro, can you give me that number? I believe it's 8. 8 officers we have on administrative leave right now.
And just to be clear, sir, 8 officers opened fire?
Yes, 8 officers opened fire. And again, I'm sorry, but 8 officers opened fire throughout the entire incident. This entire incident lasted for about a 2-hour period from the initial call until the conclusion of the incident was about 2 hours. And again, that's three different scenes that occurred.
Can we have the spelling of the last name from the suspect?
Mares.
Nearest.
Chief, can you tell us anything about the initial call that what prompted those shots that were being called about? Is there any information on that?
Yeah, the initial call was a gunshot disturbance. And again, this is a call that officers respond to routinely. So the initial call was a gunshot disturbance. However, there was a heightened sense of urgency because one of the callers, you could hear the gunshots coming from outside of her house. And so this was ongoing, and but that was the initial call.
What time did this start, sir?
It started just after midnight, 12:03, 12:04, something like that.
This is very important, sir. In the neighborhood, neighbors said that the family had been grilling, just like they, like a lot of folks do on Sundays, and that everything started kind of going crazy a little around 8, with fired shots at around 10:30. Is there any truth to that? Because I'm just then wondering, did no one call 911 until midnight?
I'd love to answer, but I don't know. That's one of those details I don't know. So did we receive calls earlier that night? I don't know that, but we can research that.
Are you familiar with the suspect already? Have you guys had previous dealings with him before?
We are not intimately familiar with him. We've had dealings way in the past, like 10 years ago, but to indicate he's on our radar for anything, no.
Any information about how many people were inside the house with him?
I don't know the answer to that.
Oh,
I know there were multiple people, but I don't know how many.
Sorry. Was he acting alone? He was the only suspect that you guys were looking for?
He is the only suspect we're looking for.
Chief,
Yes.
I cannot imagine getting this kind of call and to know that it was a 2-hour kind of attack. Can you just give us a little bit of heart when it comes to, I can't even imagine for you guys.
Yeah, this is a call you get at 2 o'clock in the morning you don't want to get, but this is one of the dangers these officers face, and again, they face it every day. When is that routine call going to turn into something like this? And now our job is to deal with the aftermath, not just the investigation, but the officers that were involved. We have to make sure that they are mentally and physically healthy moving forward. So,
Also, is there a little bit more emotion to this, being that you just lost one of your former officers, Cooper Dawson, last year, and then a Dallas police officer, Derek Bergstein, shot at his own squad car, and unfortunately that resulted in his death. I mean, there must be a lot of emotions surrounding it.
yeah, I'm trying not to show emotions, but yeah, we could be right now planning 5 Garland police officer funerals. We had 5 squad cars that were hit, and so this could have went completely different. And we're still dealing with Cooper Dawson and his loss. He was very close to us, very close to the officers here. So, we work through these incidents. We try to do it without emotion, but absolutely emotion tends to take over sometimes.
You said witnesses said that he wasn't going back to jail, so I assume he has some sort of record. Witnesses on the scene heard him say this before, after, during? Did he say this to your police officers?
We have a witness that told us this is what he said before the final shooting occurred.
You mentioned that your injured officer's been with Garland PD for 1 year. Was he with a different police department prior? How long has he been in law enforcement?
He
Or
was-
is he just a 1 year fresh out of different?
He was a jailer in New York, so he worked for the detention center in New York. Now, understand, detention officers in New York are sworn detention officers, so he was not a police officer, but he was a detention officer, and we've actually had several New York detention officers come to our department, and all of them are fantastic. So, but he's been a police officer on the streets for 1 year, a little over 1 year.
Talking about the tourniquet, thank God your officers have had it on hand, and it reminds me of the Greenville shooting where the officer put his own tourniquet on. He speaks to your officers running to the aid of their injured.
Yeah, and you know, at some point, it'd probably be worth the story to talk about all the tourniquets we've used as law enforcement officers, because initially we got them to use on ourselves, but we use them on others. But the tourniquet is a vital tool. It's something we apply on any limb immediately to slow the bleeding. Cooper Dawson, of course, you know, we trained him here on use of tourniquet, and he applied his own tourniquet. But yeah, it's definitely a life-saving device that we use. I don't want to say all the time, but it has been used frequently, yeah.
Sir, what word do you have for the neighbors in that area? Because all of them are very concerned about what happened, they are concerned about the officer, but some of them told me we feel that we were in a movie or something like that.
Yeah, we felt like we were in a movie too. I mean, it was one of those surreal incidents that lasted several hours, and as many gunshots that were fired, I'm sure that the neighbors are concerned. And so I'm hoping that we are also streaming on Facebook, I'm hoping they can see this and understand that at least this incident is over. And now maybe we can help rebuild some of the relationships and some of the community groups that are in that neighborhood. We do have a crime watch group in that neighborhood. So again, hopefully we can start to rebuild on that.
Do you have a ballpark of how many shots were fired while we were standing out there, even from our distance behind the crime scene tape? We saw at least 98 evidence markers. Do you have any range of how many shots were fired?
I don't, but I can give you a guess that it's going to be over 100 shots.
From the suspect or?
From both. I mean, if you were to think of both, I know the suspect fired a lot of shots before we even got to the scene. And then I couldn't tell you how many shots he fired. I've watched some of the body-worn camera videos, and you can hear the shots being fired at the officers, but I couldn't give you a guess. Altogether, I would say over 100 shots.
And I was going to ask, did all of your officers that were involved in this, including the injured officer, have their body-worn cameras rolling? You've probably seen some of the video, like you said. Walk
They did.
through what you thought when you saw this video. I can't.
Yeah, well, again, it's just, you know, I'm thankful that I'm here giving this. You know, it's horrible for Mr. Maris's family. I know they're dealing with the loss, but I am thankful that we're not burying a Garland police officer. But my thought is we were lucky. And you can also see in the videos the officers using the training and tactics that we taught them, including the use of the tourniquet, that I think made a difference.
Chief, 8 officers involved directly, but they have friends, best friends, possibly blood relatives in this building and in others. How does the rest of the department just carry on?
Well, our support system now wraps around those 8 officers, and getting them through not just the next few weeks, but the next few years to making sure that you know, they can get past this, or at least learn to cope with things like this. Because once an officer is involved in an officer-involved shooting, it's something they've got to cope with for the rest of their lives. And so that's a big part of what we do here, is making sure they're supported there. But we also understand we've got a job to do. And so tonight, you know, we're going back to work, and we'll be back on the streets answering similar calls. But hopefully the officers understand that the support system is there for them, and this job, which, you know, it's a very difficult job, but it is also a worthwhile job. I've been doing this job for 30 years. I don't regret 1 minute of it, and but it is sometimes a toll you got to carry.
In those 30 years, what would you say the trend in gun violence is?
Trend in gun violence, I mean, we've always had gun violence. Is it trending up or down? Our crime actually in the city of Garland is down this year. It's down in both violent crime and property crimes. But you see this, you know, I've been doing this long enough. I've seen the roller coaster up and down. But right now our crime is trending down in the city of Garland.
When will the body camera videos be released tonight?
Well, this is something we got to work with the district attorney's office. So we'll put the case together, we'll turn this over to the district attorney's office, and then we'll use their direction from there.
Why do you guys not bring in the Texas Rangers?
We investigate our own officer-involved shootings. Again, we do this in coordination with the DA's public integrity investigation. I'll take one more question.
Any injuries of any other kind other than the shot officer?
I think we have an officer that hurt her ankle, but nothing significant. The officer that received the gunshot wound, that's our most significant injury. All right, thank you guys for the time. Thank you.